All right, this is for those of you out there who are newly diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. Are you maybe having some days where you're wondering, when in the effing frick does diabetes get easier? Will there ever be a time when I am not completely and totally overwhelmed? Maybe you've heard other people talk about this elusive time after a T1D diagnosis when diabetes is less of a 24/7 crisis and it just kind of becomes part of your life. Hey everyone, and welcome to Type 1 Diabetes World, where we give you the practical strategies to successfully manage T1D. So when does diabetes get easier? It might mean sleeping through the night or getting confident about how to dose for carbohydrates, being able to manage exercise without too many ups and downs, or just not having T1D be the very first thing in the morning and the very last thing in the evening that you think about, and maybe every other time in between that. Of course, there is no standard timeline or simple answer. How long it takes to adjust to a diagnosis of T1D is so individual. It might be helpful to think about this journey in terms of flying an airplane. Now, right now, you're just sort of figuring how to get this frigging plane off the ground, right? You're kind of building the plane as you fly it, and you're figuring out what all of the dials and the levers do. Eventually, believe it or not, you will get to a cruising altitude. There will be some turbulence along the way, but I will tell you that you are going to feel a lot more able to fly the plane than when you first climbed into the cockpit. Now, what's likely to help you to feel like you're moving forward is a combination of 5 strategies. Number 1, time and experience, or put another way, do the thing. The learning curve with T1D is steep, and getting the hang of things involves a lot of trial and error. It can be helpful to know that this is coming and to actually embrace it, because it is a natural part of this process of adjustment. And it's actually how we build confidence and learn what works. It's really normal to get intimidated by firsts, right? So first day back at school, first trip through airport security, first sick day, first date, first set of holidays, first time exercising since you started taking insulin. Think about some of those things that you feel intimidated by right now. This is where you want to try to adopt that attitude of do the thing. And what can be helpful when things feel challenging is breaking them down into small, manageable chunks. I worked with a newly diagnosed young man who loved camping. And when T1D showed up, he was really afraid that he'd have to skip this annual trip that he went on with his friends. And the task felt so daunting. So we broke it into smaller steps. Talk to his provider. Ask others in the T1D community for tips. Remember to give yourself credit for having grit, and have a practice camp out where you definitely do not forget the s'mores, because I know that's why I go camping. Then he went on this trip and he came back and he said, yeah, there were times that were difficult and tough, and it was totally awesome. Our second strategy for helping to move forward is educate yourself, kind of like you're doing right now. Aside from the obvious, blogs and podcasts and books and the socials, participating in research studies is another great source of support and education. They kind of give you more information and sometimes even some more hand-holding than you would get otherwise. And you get to contribute to research. A really hot tip here, please try to consume information in a healthy way. It's actually really important to pace yourself here. It can be very tempting to want to know everything all at once. But a lot of times, this is just too overwhelming because you are not a robot. You are a human, and we tend to spiral when we feel like we need to know all of the things and we try to just take in all of the information at one time. If it's 3 a.m. for the 4th night in a row and you've been scrolling on your phone for the last several hours, there is a very high likelihood that you are not in a healthy place. Also, keep in mind that everyone's diabetes experience is unique. And it's a good idea to check with your team before you try out the stuff that you hear on social media, even the stuff you hear on this channel. Our third strategy is about mindset. Mindset is something that we actually do have control over in type 1 diabetes. There's a lot of stuff that is actually not in our direct control. And so if we do get to pick something here, we want to choose a healthy mindset that sets us up for success. A big part of this is acknowledging your successes and managing your expectations. As far as successes go, it's important to realize and to recognize actually how far you've come, all that you have made it through and learned. Take a minute today and just try to name 3 things that you're proud of since the diagnosis. I bet you've done stuff that you never thought you'd be able to do, like giving an injection. And maybe even write these things down on a Post-it note and put it where you'll see it. As far as expectations, allowing yourself to not do diabetes perfectly, right, which you won't because you are not a pancreas, that is such an important part of adjusting to diabetes. There can be so much shame and guilt in diabetes management when we don't do things perfectly. So being thoughtful about how you think about diabetes and even the way that you talk to yourself about it can help you to feel less stressed. I realize this is a tall order, so we've made a whole separate video about it, and please feel free to check that out when you're done here. Now for our fourth strategy, dial in your medical management. This one might sound kind of like, duh, but of course you're not going to feel like T1D is getting easier if your blood glucose numbers are still bouncing around and your medical management isn't quite dialed in. There are a lot of different choices and insulin regimens out there for managing T1D. And for some, the ideal includes tech, like continuous glucose monitors and/or insulin pumps, and for others, it doesn't. The important part is feeling like you have an understanding of all of the diabetes management tools that are available to you, and that you feel like you know how to use them. So, working with a supportive diabetes team to help you find what works for you and to get insulin doses on point can really do wonders for uncomplicating and defrustrating your life. A big part of successful medical management, of course, is your mental and emotional health. Your team can help give you some guidance there too. It's pretty cool. I'm starting to see more clinics who either have like a mental health professional on staff or are able to give you information about therapists in the community who understand chronic medical conditions. So go ahead and take a moment and just think about where you might be able to use some more resources. And last but certainly not least, number 5, which is find your T1D community. You can gain a ton of knowledge from hearing about others' experiences and life hacks. Even when we have really supportive friends and loved ones, it can feel so lonely and isolating to have this condition. It's kind of its own beast. And there are so many people that I work with who haven't actually met another person with type 1 diabetes before they met me. T1D can feel so much more manageable when we feel like we are not alone and we don't have to explain what that beeping is or why we have to have a bag of fruit snacks 15 minutes before dinner. There is a huge community out there full of people who have been in your shoes. So get connected because you do not have to do this on your own. Okay, let's recap. T1D has a huge learning curve, and time and experience will help you to get more comfortable with management. The timeline will look and feel different for everyone. Do the things that feel challenging because these will help you to build confidence and give you that solid evidence that you can handle life with T1D. Educate yourself. Learn what you can while keeping in mind that you do not need to know everything. And be mindful of where you're getting your information from. Cultivate a healthy mindset. Acknowledge your successes and manage your expectations for perfection. Dial in your medical management and make the most of your resources. And finally, find your T1D community. It is full of wisdom and compassion and people who get it. That's it for this video. Thanks so much for watching. Please remember to hit like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.